Welcome to the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, we're talking about Kamasi Washington, his biography and best hits. During this hour, a quick insight into some of his best albums. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. His latest one's called Fearless Movement. And it's wild because for Kamasi, it's actually kinda chill. Still big, still dramatic, but this time, he's clearly trying to have some fun. Now go back to The Choice, that secret bonus album that he hid inside Heaven and Earth. Totally different energy. Mellow, smooth, almost like he's just vibing in the background. There's a trippy cover of Oh Child that really catches the audience off guard. Kinda eerie, kinda hopeful, super cool. And then there's Enigmatic Society. Kamasi is teaming up with Robert Glasper and Terrace Martin for their group. This one, so chill. Like candlelit, windows open, just breathe kinda chill. It's got these soft piano touches, gentle sax, just little moments that hit in exactly the right way. So yeah, whether he's going for all the big cinematic stuff or just laying back the groove, Kamasi always brings it. So that was a quick recap of what we will be talking about during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Kamasi Washington, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums of all time. We've traveled with Kamasi through the sprawling odyssey of the epic, soared the skies of heaven and earth, and paused in reflection with harmony of difference. But now, 2025, Kamasi is back with two releases that continue to stretch the definition of what jazz can be: Fearless Movement and the hidden gem, The Choice. Let's start with the big new release, Fearless Movement. This record is a bold experiment, one where Kamasi loosens the collar, lets down the hair, and tries something that's not always easy. He tries to have fun. You'll still get soaring solos and dense arrangements, but this time there's George Clinton funk, a Zapp cover, and throwback MC energy courtesy of guest rappers like D Smoke and the Austin Brothers. Kamasi is even playing around with party music. Take his cover of Computer Love, a classic groove from Zapp reimagined with serious intent. Instead of bounce, we get solemn horns and extended intros. Midway through the record, everything shifts. Dream State welcomes none other than Andre 3000. The groove relaxes, the sax and flute dance, the rhythm section finally breathes, and suddenly Kamasi is no longer trying to entertain, he simply exists in the music. The garden path brings back Kamasi's signature triumph. The melodies are rich, the band play together like they've weathered storms, and that's where this album shines most. Now let's rewind a bit to a secret you might have missed. Tucked away inside the vinyl sleeve of his 2018 epic Heaven and Earth was a hidden record. Cut it free and you discover The Choice, a bonus album of 5 tracks that shows Kamasi in a quieter, smoother light. This isn't a fireworks show. Instead, it's meditation. Covers like Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, are stretched out. At other times, in the eerie psychedelic take on Oh Child, Kamasi reminds us that comfort can carry an undertone of unrest. Agents of the Multiverse is another standout. It hints at the Pharoah Sanders style astral jazz that Kamasi often is compared to. But it's drummer Chris Daddy Dave's backbeats and Kamasi's rhythmic horn lines that gives this track its tension and release. And that's why The Choice doesn't break much new ground. It proves something essential. Kamasi knows how to scale back, how to find clarity in softness, not just in size. Gravitas with groove, wrestling with joy and depth, embracing imperfection on the path to discovery. And with The Choice, he reminds us that sometimes the most powerful moments are the quiet ones. Whether he's reaching for the heavens or grounding us in the everyday, Kamasi's music carries one consistent thread: soul. And that's what makes him one of the most exciting figures in jazz and music at large today. And an album called Dinner Party. Dinner Party is a supergroup made up of sax icons Terrace Martin and Kamasi Washington, the genre-bending pianist Robert Glasper, and legendary producer Ninth Wonder. Sounds like an Avengers lineup, right? But instead of each flexing solos like it's a Jazz Olympics, these four cook up something way cooler, something smoother. Their first drop back in 2020, that was healing music in hard times, hip-hop, jazz and R&B served with warmth and soul. But the second course, Enigmatic Society, it's slinkier, synthier, pure 80s shimmer meets Crenshaw cool. On tracks like Insane, you get hook-heavy jams that could loop your head for days, think G-lights gliding over neon-lit skies. And then there's Can't Go, a Hall & Oates flip with just a hint of yacht rock, polished and sun-soaked. Vocally, they brought the A-team. Ant Clemens, Irene Ray, Tank, and the ever-welcome Felix lace these tracks with velvet. And mixed with the hip-hop is top-notch jazz. You can hear it in the piano outro of Answered Prayer, the celestial harp sense of For Granted, and the pure sax swagger of What's Renaissance. That track, oh yeah, Kamasi is bringing sax back and with finesse. Here's the real magic. While most pop artists sprinkle in jazz to make things spicy, Dinner Parties flip the script. They are jazz and they are inviting R&B, hip-hop and soul to their table. Dinner Party isn't just a vibe, it's an entire mood board for modern soul. So that was some insight into some of Kamasi Washington's best albums of all time, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, Kamasi Washington. Now it's time for some trending album news. So great new album up for release by jazz vocalist Heather Ward. This one's called Gilded and Silver. Now if the name rings a bell, maybe you heard her first record, Honey Sweet. That one had some real soul to it. But this one, this new one, it feels more personal, more seasoned, like Heather's totally settled into her sound. You can hear those old school jazz influences, Sarah Vaughan, Dinah Washington vibes, but she's doing her own thing. It doesn't feel like she's copying anyone, it's just her. She actually had a bunch of songs left over from her last album, so she thought, why not keep going? And Gilded and Silver was born. She's got a great group on this one too. John Hanson on piano, Mo Wiesner on bass, some gorgeous horn work in there from Kate Olsen and Joe Tyndall. And those arrangements, so tasteful. It's one of those albums where you really want to sit with it. There's one track in particular that's very special, Into the Music. She wrote it as a tribute to her jazz mentor Hugh Fraser and her uncle Joe. Both of them passed away during the pandemic. And the song is full of heart. Heather started out in visual arts, just singing at gallery shows, and that led her into jazz school, studying with legends, really diving in. And now, she's out there teaching voice, mentoring, performing all around Seattle. Anyway, check this album out. Put on Gilded and Silver tonight. It's streaming everywhere now. And that was some trending album news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about more of Kamasi Washington's best albums. Stay tuned. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, Kamasi Washington, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best songs. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. First up is Change of the Guard. This one kicks the door open. Huge sound, full choir, strings, drums, and then Kamasi comes in with his sax like he's making a statement from second one. And then there's The Magnificent Seven. Imagine a 70s action movie, car chasers, tight alleyways, and it's all piano solos and crazy horn runs. The drums are non-stop, it's so much fun. The rhythm changes, slows things down. This one's got vocals, rare for Kamasi, and Patrice Quinn. His voice is just warm, like sunlight. It's got this soul jazz feel, kinda like Stevie Wonder, but with Kamasi weaving his sax right through it. It just lifts you. Now, Interstellar Peace. This one sounds like jazz floating through space. Real slow, real gentle, but full of hidden layers. And the last track's called Prologue. But it's actually the close on his 2024 album Fearless Movement. And it's wild. Drums flying, keys going nuts. It feels like the end and the beginning of something bigger. So that was some insight into what's coming up during this hour, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, Kamasi Washington, his biography and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about some of his best songs. Let's kick things off with a big one. This one's called Change of the Guard, the opening track of Kamasi's The Epic. From the jump, this track comes in swinging. Full choir, lush strings, deep drums. It's like an orchestra and a spiritual awakening at the same time. And then Kamasi steps in on that sax like he owns the air. If this is your first listen, buckle up. You're about to feel jazz in your bones. Now, switching gears but not slowing down, we're heading into the Magnificent Seven. This one, whole other vibe. Think 70s action film, fast edits, street chasers. You've got piano solos and wild horn runs that hit like firecrackers. Gritty, groovy cinematic, but filtered through Kamasi's cosmic jazz lens. And those drums, absolutely relentless. It isn't just a track, it's an adrenaline boost. Up next is an all-time favorite, The Rhythm Changers. This one's got lyrics which you don't always get on the Epic. Patrice Quinn, her voice feels like sunbeams beaming through a storm cloud. You've got that soul jazz groove, somewhere between Stevie Wonder and Floating in a Dream, and Kamasi's sax just glides over the top like a feather on water. It all builds and blooms, and by the end, you're not just listening, you're rising. Next up, this one's called Interstellar Peace, The Last Dance. It starts slow, real gentle, almost like the galaxies exhale, but then the layers start sliding in. Soft drums, distant vocals, melodies wrapping around you like it's stardust. It's jazz that feels like a movie score from another dimension. You don't just hear this track, you float through it. And now we land on Prologue. It's called Prologue, but in classic Kamasi fashion, this one's actually closing out his 2024 album Fearless Movement. It's wild. It's like every instrument on the record is having one last word. Percussion flying, keys spiraling, and Kamasi's sax leading the pack like it's charging into the future. And that was some insight into Kamasi Washington's best singles, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On this week's episode, Kamasi Washington, his biography and best hits. We've come to an end of this week's episode of the Jazz Update, so now let's recap what we were discussing during this program. Kamasi is a saxophone powerhouse straight out of Inglewood, Los Angeles. Grew up in a musical family. His dad was a sax player too, so music was in his blood. He picked up the sax at age 13, linked up with talents like Thundercat during college, and together they formed his amazing collective, West Coast Get Down. Now let's talk about some of his best singers. We are starting off with Change of the Guard. Full orchestra, choir, drums, and Kamasi tearing through it all with his horn. Then comes The Magnificent Seven, like 70s action films with solos. The rhythm changes, slows it down, with vocals from Patrice Quinn that feels like sunlight. Kamasi's sax floats through it all, pure soul. And Prologue from his 2024 album Fearless Movement feels like the grand finale and a new beginning all at once. Speaking of albums, we'll get into the epic. 3 discs of pure cinematic jazz storytelling. Then there's Heaven and Earth, which splits Kamasi's inner and outer worlds. Everything from heavy funk to dreamy spiritual layers. And don't sleep on Harmony of Difference. Just 30 minutes, but every note counts. It's about contrast. And the final track, Truth, Absolute Magic. So that was a quick recap of everything that we discussed on this week's episode of the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. And that brings me to an end of this week's episode of the program. You can check out my YouTube channel, The Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan, for highlights. So I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.